Tifu by having a drink of water on an airplane. So as it's known, you cannot bring liquids over 100 milliliters on commercial flights. I decided to be proactive and bring an empty water bottle across security and then would fill it up on the other side. Seems logical, right? So I went through security and then proceeded to the water bottle filling station on the other side. I filled my bottle, put it away and didn't think of it much after that. Now I have one of those bottles that is kind of like a sippy cup, a spring-loaded mouthpiece that folds down into the lid to close that opens to ready position with the click of a button. A straw down the middle of the bottle so when you're drinking from the mouthpiece the water comes from the bottom, like a regular straw. I wait for a couple of hours after a long delay and board my flight. We take off and there are no problems. I decided after about an hour in the air that I'm thirsty. I go and grab my water bottle and then click the button, the one that spring loads the mouthpiece to open. Now as I press the button, I start to think about air pressure. Especially in sealed bottle at a very high elevation, that have liquid in it. Luckily there were no people sitting in my row with me, super lucky. Because as I pressed the button, a geyser erupts from the mouthpiece about 2 feet above me, hitting the ceiling above and pouring a significant amount of water all over myself and the other 2 seats that were thankfully empty. Super fun rest of my flight. Too long did not read. I opened my water bottle at a high elevation and I was soaked. Done this before. Now I screw the top open and close it back up before hitting the button for the mouthpiece. Honestly yes that sucks but you lucked out significant much you didn't have seatmates. Same exact thing happened to me, but I shot water over my seat onto the person behind me. Great fun, I'm thankful they were understanding it was just water. I would have laughed lol. Luckily it was just water. I work as a flight attendant, so I'm familiar with this common occurrence. Last year, I was flying for leisure, and I had the misfortune of, carefully, opening a coffee creamer, the kind in the little cups, and it still shot a direct stream onto lady next to me and her coat. I was mortified. Is this problem exclusive to bottles with straws? I had a screw-top water bottle that I refilled in the Lufthansa lounge at Newark before my flight to Frankfurt. About 3 hours into the flight I can't seem to unscrew it without significant effort. Seems I refilled it from a bottle of sparkling water in the lounge. Oops. Today I fucked up by not checking what the rancid smell was coming from around my water tank. Reading the story of the dead cat found behind the fridge reminded me of my own fuck up. Little bit of side info. I live on and run a farm in South Wales and we have our own spring-fed water supply to the house and sheds. That's where the fuck up occurred. Daily I drive up to our mountain grazing to check on our sheep and cattle. To do this I go past our water storage tanks. Through the course of the week I started to notice a smell of a dead animal. Initially I ignored it as I live in the countryside and it's not uncommon to find the occasional carcass. On the third day the smell was getting stronger so I had a nose around the water tanks and ground surrounding it. I found a dead crow on the ground so I moved it into some scrub and carried on with my day assuming I had found the source of the smell. Back home the wife and kids were noticing a bit of a bitter taste to our water. I did seem a bit off but it's very mineral rich and we were having unusually hot weather so the spring had slowed down. I attributed the bitter taste to the fact the groundwater was more sedimented than usual. Days go by but the stench around my tanks began getting stronger to the point it was overwhelming. I thought fuck me that crow is rancid but it is hot so perhaps that's why it smells so bad. All the while our water was starting to become very bitter and not good to drink even after boiling it. On the 8th day the water in the house was smelling awful as well. The same rancid smell that I thought the decomposed crow smelled of. So I go up to the water tanks just to make sure all is well. I lift off the heavy iron lids only to be hit across the face with the most unimaginable stench. It was hot wafts of rotting corpse. It knocked me back off my feet. I can't explain how bad this smell was. My eyes were streaming and I gagged so much I pulled a stomach muscle. I knew instantly this was more than a dead crow. Flies were swarming around like it was the apocalypse. I tried to hold my breath and shine a torch in the tank to see what was in there. Somehow and I still to this day don't know how. As the covers were still in place, a sheep had managed to fall into the water tank and drown. It had been in there decomposing for well over a week. All that was left was maggot-covered bones and entrails floating around in our water supply, which myself and family had been happily drinking for the last week. The next day was spent suited up in the 30-degree heat spooning out the jellied remains of a dead sheep from my iron water tank covered in maggots and corpse sludge, gagging and sweating. It had to be bucketed out by hand. It was without a doubt the worst thing I have ever smelled. The heat didn't help. It took days to clean up and disinfect and even longer for the wife to forgive me for letting her drink rotting sheep flesh-flavored water. Too long did not read. Tifu by ignoring the fact that there was a rotting animal corpse in my drinking water supply. That's just about the worst thing I've ever read. Nauseated face vomiting. That was some bod-tasting water. I'm surprised that nobody got sick from drinking the water. I think you should investigate how that sheep got in, to see if it got in on its own or if someone threw it in. Ah yes, the Hotel Cecil home experience. Well, I'm done on Reddit for today. That's one of the worst things I've ever read. I'm right there with you gagging. Today I fucked up by not listening to Gwen Stefani. Before I get into my story, I'm referring to not listening to the chorus of Hollaback Girl. You'll know why in a second, lol. So I had my first baby in early January. At apt 2 months postpartum, I started noticing black specks in my poop. Dr. Google informed me that black specks that look like coffee grounds, like mine did, are caused by upper GI bleeding and I needed to see a doctor ASAP. I scheduled with my PCP, and was seen in early March, 2 weeks or so after the specks appeared. They did a rectal exam and tested the glove for blood afterwards, which turned out positive. So off I went to a gastroenterologist to determine the cause of bleeding. I ended up getting a colonoscopy and endoscopy. The prep was awful. I endured a liquid diet while continuing to breastfeed, shit my brains out while having to care for my colicky baby all night, then almost had to go to the ER for dehydration and miss the procedure the morning of. Unfortunately, after all of that, the results came back normal. Next I was scheduled to swallow a pill camera so they could see into my small intestine. It had nearly the same prep, but wasn't quite as awful this time thankfully. I got my results last week. They also came back normal. At this point, it had been 3–4 months of the specks with no visible cause. I'd spent nearly $16,000 on procedures because of my high-deductible healthcare plan that offered basically no coverage. My perplexed doctor prescribed 2 medications for me to take 5 times a day and told me to make another appointment in 2 months if the specks continued. Well, my baby is now just under 6 months old and we started solid foods this week. We started with bananas. Today when I changed his diaper, I noticed some black specks. At first I was worried he was having GI bleeding as a reaction to the bananas, but read up that it's not uncommon for partially undigested bananas to cause black specks in a baby's diaper. And then it all clicked. I'm about 99% sure my specks are fucking undigested bananas. It all makes sense now. I didn't eat bananas during my pregnancy because of reflux, but I started eating them again about 2 months postpartum. Exactly when the specks started. I eat them most days because they're one of the cheapest fruits, hence why the specks haven't gone away. The original rectal exam must have come back positive because I had a bleeding hemorrhoid from the birth 2 months prior. And it would explain why now they've scoped my entire digestive tract and found zero evidence of bleeding. So I've spent $16,000 out of pocket to eat bananas. Woman facepalming medium light skin tone. I heard Hollaback Girl today and laughed my ass off when realizing that the lyrics say, word for word, "This shit is bananas, bananas." Should have played that song earlier. Tears of joy. Too long did not read. I spent $16,000 trying to figure out why I was having GI bleeding. Found out it was undigested bananas. So it sounds like a few times you went around that track. In all seriousness, I'm glad to hear you and your baby are okay. As soon as I read black specks, I thought bananas. I'm a nanny and have explained this phenomenon to many parents. I would have only charged you $5,000. If I charged a customer $16,000 across multiple visits and they discovered the problem on their own after months of me failing, I wouldn't blame them if they wanted their money back. Especially if it was something this stupid. This shit is solid. Those hospital bills definitely gonna holla back. You've forever changed the way I'll perceive this song. Today I fucked up by telling my husband to take out the trash. Throw away for obvious reasons. So, I 25 female been feeling off recently, lack of appetite, getting the ick from foods I love, I've been very tired and very emotional. I cried because we were out of peanut butter and bananas tender boobies, but the worst was nausea. I was 2 weeks late on my period. Which isn't normal. I took a pregnancy test. It came back positive. I was in denial and went and got more pregnancy tests and bought multiple from different brands. Most of them came back positive. I put them in a baggie because pee and threw them in the dumpster outside. I kept one of them. Now our garbage man comes every Sunday. So I reminded my husband 25 mail to take the trash out tonight so he doesn't forget tomorrow. Big mistake, huge. So he did, then he comes back inside a baggie in his hand. The baggie comes up to me and says, "Baby, I think someone threw pregnancy tests in our garbage." Why would he pick it up? I don't know. I wanted to go to the doctor before I told him, but cat's out the bag. My face said it all. I started laughing, like wheezing laughing. It took me a minute to calm down. He goes, "I'm glad you find this amusing, but this is weird." Still holding the bag? I told him that those are mine and that I am almost positive I'm pregnant, but I have an appointment Monday, so we will see what happens then. Then the conversation consisted of him. "No way me." "Yes way him." "No way me." "Yes way him." "I'll cry if you're lying me." "Don't cry. I'm not lying, you're still holding the evidence, which you should put down." He gets up, leaves, outside, squeals and literally jumps for joy like a kid, comes back inside, hugs me, tells me he loves me, and then says he has to add more baby clothes to his shopping cart now. More? I've learned not to question it, he's the girl in this relationship. I wasn't meant to tell him before I went to the doctor. But I have booked an appointment and will be going to the doctor's tomorrow. I feel like this was a massive fuck up. But humorous and wholesome. Y'all pray for me, I might faint tomorrow. Too long, did not read. I told my husband to go take out the trash and he came back with my pregnancy tests that I threw away. Not a fuck up, your hub sounds adorable. Congrats and good luck. Be happy you've got a man who's happy you're pregnant. And expect lots more mood swings. It's alright, get a good prenatal vitamin and have a wonderful life. Glad he was happy. I was so concerned the story was going to turn into him being worried you were trying to hide it from him or something. Well, I'm glad he reacted with joy. Congratulations, 2 hearts. I love this. I wish you guys the best of luck. Sounds like y'all will have a loving household. So cute actually.